Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of Around the Slice. I am here today for the weekly preview show. In this preview show, we got Bills at Colts. So, like I just mentioned, Bills at Colts will be this Sunday, 2 days from now, Sunday, November 10th at 1 o'clock p.m. in Indianapolis, Indiana. And the game will be broadcast on CBS. So let's get into the meat of the show, if you will, with my keys to the game for both sides of the ball, respectively, for the Bills, my player of the game predictions, my fun underdog fantasy player props. You know how it goes. You know the drill by now, over halfway through the year by now. So let's just get right into it without any more intro. My three biggest keys for the Bills offense heading into Indianapolis at the Colts. Now, I'm going to preface this with this. I really like the Colts middle of the field coverage. What I mean by that is I really like their star slot corner, Kenny Moore, and I think their linebacker duo of very physical and athletic, underrated duo of EJ Speed at middle linebacker and then Zaire Franklin at weak side linebacker, respectively. I think that's a really potent and underrated duo, if you will, across this league, and they don't get enough respect as a duo, go hand in hand together. So I really like their middle of the field coverage. So that means I don't think the tight ends will do much in this game. Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, which they might have to overcome that deficiency because unfortunately we heard from Sean McDermott this morning that not only has Keon Coleman been ruled out for this game against the Colts, this Sunday in 2 days, but it's probably going to be more of a multiple week thing, he said, although he thinks he will avoid IR. So that means probably out for the next 3 games. I would assume at the earliest he would come back week 13 when we host the 49ers in Orchard Park, New York, in Orchard Park there at Highmark Stadium. I wouldn't count on seeing Keon Coleman specifically until then. I wouldn't count on seeing him, obviously not this week against the Colts, but next week too, in week 11 versus the Chiefs. Um, I just got to vent about this for a minute. Like, stupid Jordan Poyer. Like, I know people can say, well, the NFL is soft these days. They call flags and everything. No, guys, that would have been a flag 20 years ago. Like, that was a brutal, brutal hit. And Poyer is known to do this. He did it week 2 against Khalil Shakir, and now he did it last week, week 9 against Keon Coleman. And it absolutely baffles me that Jordan Poyer wasn't fined 1 cent, not one penny taken off of his bank account and contract or whatever the hell it is with fines. The NFL loves, and I mean loves, taking away um, money from their players for useless, stupid reasons. This was grounds for absolutely not only a fine, but I think he should have even been suspended at least a game. I won't go as far as a 2 game suspension, but I think Jerome Poyer easily should have got ejected in that moment. And he should be suspended for this Sunday's game. Who do the Dolphins play? They play at Rams, which I don't think they'll win because it's a whole West Coast trip, and the Dolphins are way worse this season, and Tua's still getting back to full strength and full health and what have you. But yeah, I had to get it off my chest because I think it's absolutely ridiculous the BS that Jordan Poyer pulled there against Keon. So, I mean, I just don't know. And then another one, McDermott revealed this morning that fullback Reggie Gilliam and fellow wide receiver Amari Cooper will more than likely be questionable in 2 days for this game against the Colts in Indy. I think neither of them will play, but I don't really care about Reggie Gilliam, even though Sledge will always be first and foremost in my heart. I love Sledge, by the way, if you don't know. But so that's what I have to say on Sledge. But also Amari Cooper, like, we would have to rely on like our backs and tight ends a lot. I don't think Cooper will play, questionable or not, just because he had a cast. I don't know how you're supposed to play a cast when you've had a cast at practice. I don't know how you're supposed to play with that huge club/cast. So that's my thoughts on that. But anyway, I don't think the Titans will have much success in this game necessarily. So I think, one, use the quick game, but two, their deep corners are really, really, really bad. Actually, I'm sorry. I have that flipped. Their corners have actually overperformed this year. The duo, I already talked about Kenny Moore in the slot. The duo of Samuel Womack and Jalen Jones has overperformed this year. But then at safety, strong safety, you have Julian Blackman. Free safety, you have Nick Cross, who actually I really, really like both of those. But those guys are more like zone match physical style corners as opposed to running man to man with certain offenses. And certainly the Bills offense, when you're going to have to deploy like I don't know, like dare I say Curtis Samuel? Like I would say this is a huge, like this has to be a Curtis Samuel game, but I lost faith in him so long ago. So I think Khalil Shakir is going to have like easily double digit targets, but also easily double digit receptions. So, and don't forget, I know the last few weeks he's not been a screen merchant, but like he's been used with screens and he works after the catch and intermediate field. He's a slot god, if you will, slot monster. But his underrated speed is his downfield speed, is very underrated. The way he can stretch the field is very underrated. And I think a sneaky practice squad elevation for this game would be Jalen Virgil. He can stretch defenses downfield as well. So Mac Hollins and Khalil Shakir is going to have to work downfield a lot more than he's used to. And I'm not saying he can't do it. We just haven't seen it barely at all, rarely this season, if you will. So I think attacking this weak secondary, especially those weak coverage safeties, with, once again, I'll remind you again, Julian Blackman and Nick Cross, respectively, as their more physical zone match guys as opposed to man-to-man, like matchup style talents. So that's just where my head's at with that downfield stress. And then second, get creative with runs. Like sometimes, and Joe Brady for the most part is really, really good at this. Rarely will he do boring up the middle runs. Like throw a few gadget plays in there, throw a few trick plays in there. Mainly why I want to say I want to run a ton of outside zone, which James Cook, that's his best attribute. So I want to run a ton of outside zone because mainly I want to avoid DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, who is one of the most underrated players, not just for defensive linemen and defensive tackles necessarily, but like one of the most underrated players, in the league in general in present day, currently today. So yeah, I just want to avoid DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart at all costs. So if you have to bounce outside of a few tackles, bounce it out. If you have to, run outside zone 99.9% of the time, you do that. And like Ty Johnson's whatever, but use both backs in that. James Cook, Ray Davis, like even Ty Johnson to a smaller extent, way smaller extent, obviously, but they can go both catch the ball at a pretty high level. So all three of them, So yeah, what have you with that. So that's awesome. Just don't run up the middle on DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. Like I hate boring up the middle runs. Get creative with it. I think one of my underdog fantasy player props have to do with a James Cook reception mark. Little spoiler alert, foreshadowing, but yeah, I think the backs, especially other than Khalil Shakir and Mac Hollins trying to beat man coverage downfield, I think the backs in particular, those, especially James Cook and Ray Davis, but like I just said literally a few seconds ago, Ty Johnson to a way smaller extent. I think they'll have to get a lot of targets, and by extent of that, a lot of receptions out of the backfield to stress these edge defenders. And speaking of those edge defenders, the Bills' offensive line needs to hold up against Colts. Keyword athletic pass rushers. The Colts pass rushers, they're not built on power. They don't have much physicality, but they're very bendy. They're very twitched up. They're very athletic. I'm just going to go. They go 4 deep at pass rusher with Kwity Paye, Latu, and a couple of depth guys, and Jernard Avery, and I always struggle with his name, Deo Odenigbo, I think it is. So between Paye, Latu, Avery, and Odenigbo, Odenigbo is how you say it. Odenigbo, those 4, they're really twitched up dudes. They're not built on much power. But the good thing is, I actually don't think this will be my favorite one out of the 4 is Latu, easily by far. And Kwity Paye is a first-round pick in the same draft class as Greg Rousseau. Hasn't been a bust, but Greg Rousseau has clearly outplayed him, and I don't think Kwity Paye has nearly reached his full potential as the Colts were expecting. That being said, they're very athletic, but I don't actually have an issue with this because Paye especially is the most athletic of the bunch, and they don't have really a star with these 4, but they can they go 4 deep. There's no star, there's no great dominant player here, but there's a lot that they can throw at you. They can throw the kitchen sink at you, if you will. And I think it's a very underrated defensive line. The good thing about this athleticism and speed, the Bills match up very well against it. The whole Bills offensive line is very, very athletic. Deion Dawkins at left tackle, very athletic. David Edwards, Connor McGovern, Spencer Brown, perfect 10 RS score, a mammoth of a human, literally and figuratively, very athletic. The only one that's athletic, actually, he's a very poor athlete, is Osiris Torrance. But that's okay because he's at right guard most of the time. I say most because they do line up Kwity Paye inside sometimes, and Deo Odiningbo as well, more so Kwity Paye as a pseudo-hybrid defensive tackle. Majority of the time, 99.9% of the time, if you will, Osiris Torrance will be lining up against those interior rushers with DeForest Buckner and or Grover Stewart, respectively. So you might have to chip with Osiris Torrance if he's lining up against those athletic edge rushers. But the Colts, what I'm trying to get at is the Colts edge rushers are athletic and speedy and bendy and stuff. They're not built in power, but they're built on all that athletics style testing stuff. And the Bills can neutralize that with they have a very athletic offensive line. Again, minus Osiris Torrance is really a poor athlete. He's got a hell of a lot of power, guys. But that's okay. So they're going to hold up, and I think they will hold up. I'm not necessarily worried about any game record. I'm just saying they're all very athletic and twitchy and twitched up, if you will. Three biggest keys for the Bills: defense. Make them, meaning the Colts. So make the Colts beat you another way besides with Jonathan Taylor. This is the sad reality. I don't know how many times I have to beat this. This is the last episode I'm going to say it. The Bills will present light boxes to you all day long. That's just structurally how they built. They refuse to leave nickel defense. They refuse to leave dime defense. It's just how they play. It's just the scheme. At this point, I've accepted it is what it is. Just know that any running back with a pulse is going to go for 100 yards and a touchdown. The Bills, it is what it is. So, knowing that, Jonathan Taylor in 2021 absolutely abused us for 160 rushing yards, 160, and 5 touchdowns. It was a brutal day. So, make them beat you with these outside wide receivers. Make them beat you downfield with Josh Downs and Michael Pittman Jr., who, by the way, I don't think will play. We'll have to wait for the final practice, Friday practice for it, but he didn't practice Wednesday with a back/finger injury. He didn't practice yesterday being Thursday with a back/finger injury, so I don't think he'll play. But Josh Downs is a very twitched up guy. Do not let them beat you with Josh Downs after the catch. What I'm trying to say is make them beat you some other way other than Jonathan Taylor. Don't just say, well, we can't stop the run, so we're going to lose this game. No. Make Joe Flacco beat you with someone else other than Jonathan Taylor. Don't let only Jonathan Taylor beat you. Stress them at all levels of the field. Next, get after Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco can't move to save his life. He's 39 years old at this point. Will be 40 years old in December. He's he's a career backup, sometimes spot starter. When he started last year, the second half of the year for the Browns, when he started this year in those 2 games for the Anthony Richardson injury replacement, the magic was there. It was great. I think the magic is all gone with Joe Flacco. I think the run's over. I think the magical Fantasyland fairy tale run is over for Joe Flacco. I don't see how he gets any better. He's getting marginally worse based off of last week against the Vikings. This is not a potent offense. It's a boring offense. But if Joe Flacco is given time to let me start over. If he's given a clean pocket and time to get the ball quick and efficiently to those twitchy receivers with Josh Downs, and then the tight ends with Mo Alley Cox, Kylan Granson, Drew Ogletree, then I still don't think they'll win, but they'll make it much closer than what we want it to be. And I say the Bills pass rush has to get after this offensive line, but honestly, I don't have much confidence in that because I will admit the Colts offensive line is one of the very best in the league, easily top 10. I don't know if they're top 5, but they're for sure top 10. Listen to this. Left tackle Bernard Ryman, who's just the last 2 years I've been very surprised with, developed into a very nice tackle in this league. Left guard Quentin Nelson, Notre Dame legend. He's developed into arguably the best guard in the league. Center Tanner Bortolini, who's a rookie who can play guard, both guard spots, and center. And he's now moving into the center role based off of superstar center, steady as a rock center, Ryan Kelly going on IR and missing at least the next 4 games, including this game against the Bills. But Tanner Bortolini out of Wisconsin, they're like an O-line, offensive O-line factory over there at Wisconsin and Notre Dame with Quentin Nelson, but more so Wisconsin. I really liked him coming out of the draft, and they picked him in the 3rd round for a reason, just for this. So center Tanner Bortolini. At right guard, you have Dalton Tucker. At right tackle, you have Brandon Smith. So I don't see many successful spots here for the Bills pass rush. I think the one spot you can argue is right guard Dalton Tucker, but he's been like a pleasant surprise as well. But I think Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones lining up against Dalton Tucker will have to be like a physical force, because I don't see these edge rushers having necessarily much success at all against this tackles plus Quentin Nelson. I think lining Greg Rousseau up as a pseudo hybrid defensive tackle, if you will, on the inside, reducing him inside will be really key against Dalton Tucker. But again, I don't see much favorable matchups here with the Bills D-line versus the Bills offensive line. Bills D-line is very, very hit or miss, more often than not, unfortunately, miss. So that's what I'm thinking there with my head's at. And then, like I just said, with my first key of the game, if Joe Flacco is given a clean pocket because of the Studley offensive line, is that a word? Studley, I don't know. Basically, these offensive lines, they got stud offensive line is very great. I said if Joe Flacco can get the ball very quickly and efficiently, like his game is built on, then this will be a much more stressful and closer game than we all think, including myself. But if you make Joe Flacco hold on to the ball for a long time, that's when you can take advantage, and that's when you can get those favorable matchups, get your hands in the ball with pass deflections, tip balls up in the air, even interceptions. So make Joe Flacco uncomfortable. Make him hold on to the ball for a lot longer than he wants to and used to holding it on. Don't let him get it out quick like he wants to. And that extends to the pass rush. Like I said, there's not many favorable matchups with the Bills D-line versus the Colts O-line. But make him hold on to the ball longer than he has to. Make him go through multiple reads. Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas, Taylor Rapp, DeMar Hamlin, maybe even Jamarcus Ingram / Cam Lewis on certain packages, even Taron Johnson to an extent on the slot as a superstar slot corner. Like, you're going to have to stay phase for phase, stride for stride with those receivers and tight ends and backs with Jonathan Taylor specifically, because Joe Flacco, make him go through multiple reads, like I just said, make him hold on to the ball longer than he wants to, and then all of a sudden he'll have to force things, and you can get an interception based off of that. So that's just where my head's at with all that. If you have anything to add or chime into, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to interact with you guys as always. My players of the game predictions. On offense, this was a landslide for me. This is pretty easy for me to settle on Khalil Shakir. Like, I think he should have like double-digit targets at minimum and like also double-digit receptions, because he always catches every target that's thrown to him. I think he's going to have to be a lot more of a down-the-field threat than he wants to be, especially from this season. Again, he's an underrated down the field threat. They just don't use him much in that capacity. So I think he'll have to do a lot more of that than he's used to. He'll still have the screen game going because Khalil Shakir, fun fact, believe it or not, Khalil Shakir is the only guy in this Buffalo Bills team that can even remotely execute a screen pass. I gave up on Curtis Samuel so long ago. Obviously, a couple of our star receivers missing this game. So I think Khalil Shakir will also get screen passes, dump offs in the intermediate part of the field, and they're relying him to work after the catch. But I also think an underrated part of his game, I keep telling this home, like, we know Matt Collins can do that at a decently high level, but Khalil Shakir has to separate downfield and beat those man-to-man corners and mismatches, whether it's zone coverage, whatever. He'll have to be big down the field. So this offense for the game prediction for me is Khalil Shakir. Like, that's not even a debate for me. I came to that conclusion like in 2 seconds pretty easily. Defensive player of the game prediction. I'm not going to pick a D lineman because, like I said, I just don't think there's very many favorable matchups at all with the Bills D line versus the Colts O line, unfortunately. Defense, though, I'm going to pick Taron Johnson. I think he'll cover Jonathan Taylor really well out of the backfield, because Jonathan Taylor is not much of a receiving back, if at all. Like, he can do it, but it's not much to his game. And then those tight ends, Mo Cox, who's really old as crap now. Drew Ogletree and Kylan Granson, respectively, like they don't bother me at all. And then these receivers, like I think if anyone's going to beat us with downfield, it'd be Alec Pierce, but I'm not too worried. So I think Taron Johnson will shut down the tight ends and Jonathan Taylor out of the backfield, and he'll have to come up and run support a lot. And I think he'll have to. The Bills are going to have to do a lot of disguised blitzes and like delayed blitzes with Terrell Bernard, Taron Johnson, Taylor Rapp, DeMar Hamlin. That's arguably most, if not all, of their best attributes. Because again, the matchups won't be favorable for Bills D line versus Colts O line. So I think Taron Johnson with the Joe Flacco quick trigger nature, Taron Johnson can wrap up pretty well. So my defense player of the game prediction, for the Bills is Taron Johnson. My 5 game predictions. What am I suggesting for my 5 underdog fantasy player prop picks? The 5 plays I'm going with is Josh Allen over 237.5 passing yards. Like I said, no Cooper, no Coleman. I really like their middle of the field coverage, so Knox and Kincaid will have a somewhat minimal impact. I really like the backs out of the backfield for this game with James Cook, Ray Davis, and to a much smaller extent, like I said at the very beginning of this episode, Ty Johnson. But like the run after catch / underneath stuff will be a big part of this game plan, but also the down the field attack with Matt Collins and more specifically Khalil Shakir, which will have to improve in, is going to be great. So give me Josh Allen over 237.5 passing yards. James Cook over 2.5 receptions. I think he's going to honestly triple this mark. I think he could finish with 8 or 9 receptions and double-digit targets. I really do. You can't be dropping a touchdown because, like I said, the quick passing game is going to be critical in this game plans against the Colts. So I'm smashing James Cook over 2.5 receptions out of the backfield. Give me Joe Flacco under 235.5 passing yards. I just think when you force him to go over multiple reads, he gets kind of panicked. And like I said, I think the magic Fantasyland fairy tale style run is over. The magic is worn out, if you will. And then give me Jonathan Taylor over 78.5 rushing yards. I said any running back with a pulse against the Bills defense is going to shred us 100 yards and a touchdown for any running back that has a pulse. And this annoys me, but it is what it is at this point. The Bills are perfectly content with that. Okay, fine. Hopefully they can make someone other than Jonathan Taylor beat them with those multitude of receivers they have in Indy with the Colts. But yeah, 78.5 rushing yards. And then my last one, this is a more generalized defensive prediction. It's not necessarily a specific prop, but Bills defense gets 2 interceptions on Joe Flacco. Like I said, I think the Bills defense will force Joe Flacco into holding on to the ball a lot longer than he's used to, and I think he'll have to force some things. And those secondary players with Christian Benford, Taron Johnson, and Rasul Douglas specifically will have to get their hands on the ball early and often. And then lastly, I have the Bills winning the game 30-14. I don't want to say this is a trap game because this isn't college football. This isn't Alabama versus Louisiana Tech or something. There's no such thing as the trap game in the NFL. Every team, any team can win at any given Sunday. Every team is competitive. It's the NFL. This isn't some baby league. So there's no such thing as a trap game if you ask me. But I think this game could be a lot more competitive than we want it to be and we're expecting, and a lot closer than we want it to be and we're expecting. I think this will be close until late third quarter, early fourth quarter, and then the Bills will score a touchdown, and then all of a sudden, look at that, they pulled away and they win by 2 touchdowns. My final score prediction is Bills win. Buffalo Bills beat Indianapolis Colts in Indy 30-14, and we're 8-2 going up against the very high leverage matchup with the Chiefs. I'm predicting 5 inactive players versus the Colts. I don't think fullback Reggie Gilliam will play. Unfortunately, pour one out for Sledge. And then wide receiver Amari Cooper, I think, will be inactive. I don't know how you play with the cast on your wrist. Looks pretty bad. And then wide receiver Keon Coleman, we know he's out for not only this game, but multiple weeks. He's a stupid Jordan Poyer. And then center Will Clapp. They still prefer Cedric Van Grange over him, which for what it's worth, I do too. I fully support that. And then linebacker Nicholas Morrow, 5th and final inactive. Not only has Joe Andreessen passed him on the depth chart for special teams purposes, but it looks like Eddie Lefosio has. So it's a true youth movement, if you will, at linebacker. I could see them going with a 6th inactive. The top 3 defensive tackles are for sure going to be active with Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Austin Johnson, and them releasing / cutting, whatever the term is at this point. I know, different terminology. Zion Logue, which if he clears waivers, he'll probably more than likely, I would guess, be back in the practice squad. I thought he was woeful in the month in practice with the Bills in the 2 games. Eliaku, I thought should have gotten a roster spot over Jordan Phillips. I could see one of Quentin Jefferson or Jordan Phillips being inactive. But my 5 inactive predictions, due to injury, these 3 are injury. Reggie Gilliam, Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman, and then the two actual, like, for sure healthy scratches, not related to injury, will be center Will Clapp and linebacker Nicholas Morrow with a Joe Andreessen, Eddie Lafoscia, a true youth movement linebacker. Anyways, guys, one last reminder, I have the Bills beating the Colts in Indy 32-14 by 2 scores. So again, Bills beat Colts 30-14. Please follow me on Twitter, personally at aweingner13. Make sure to follow the show on Twitter at Around Slice. You can, of course, watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And lastly, please help me get to 50 subscribers, the big 5-0 by the end of the season. So yeah, I appreciate you guys for supporting as always. And this has been the Bills Colts preview show. I will see you on Monday, November 11th for the Bills Colts recap show. Anyways, see you guys next time. Bye.